gentlemen. My name is Aaron Miller. I'm the chair of the Republican Party of Olmsted, and I am pleased to be in attendance and introduce to you the second presidential candidate that's visited Rochester. I think of many more to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. Thank you, Roger, for that great introduction. I'm kind of reminded of the little girl. She wanted $100. She told her parents she would do good things with it. So she wrote a note. Her parents said, "Ask God, and God will provide." She said, "Dear God, please send me $100. I'll do good things with it." She put a stamp on it, sent it off. Well, the postmaster didn't know where to send it exactly. So he said, "Well, the president's pretty important. I'll send it to the president." So the president got the letter, and the president's like, "Well, that's cute. We'll send the little girl $5. She'll think that's a lot of money." So she got the money, and she was kind of underwhelmed. And her parents said, "Always write a thank you." And so she did. She said, "Dear God, thanks for the money. But next time, don't send it through Washington. They stole 95%. Know my philosophy, that's essentially it. Don't send your money to Washington. They'll waste it, they'll squander it. They're not good with money. In fact, I've often said, it's not that they're inherently stupid, well, it's a debatable question. They just don't get the right signals. And the reason you don't want Washington to be large or government to be large in Washington is because, one, they don't do anything very well, but they also have a printing press. They have virtually unlimited amounts of borrowing power. Now, there are repercussions to doing this, but let's say you send it to your state capital. You said to your state representative, "We want you to take care of this and not the federal government." Do you know what happens in your state capital? It may not all be good, but the thing is, what happens in your state capital is they don't have a printing press, and they have limitations to their borrowing power. So if you want to have some government, but you want government to be limited, send it to your state level, not to your federal level. Because at the federal level, it's basically become unlimited. I don't know if anybody saw this recently, but we raised the debt ceiling again. Raise your hand if you think it's a good idea to keep adding more debt and raise the spending limits at the same time. This is what I told them in Washington. I kept them up till 3 in the morning. They weren't very happy with me, and some of them used some words that I can't say in flight company. They would kind of come out by my desk and tell me where I could go. And it's like, no, you go outside Washington, is what I told them. I said, you leave the confines of Washington and stop at the first supermarket, and you ask the first person you meet whether it's a good idea to borrow more money and to raise the spending caps on everything. And to not reform government, but just to give more money onto the government credit cards. You ask the first person you meet. I don't care whether they're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. They're not going to think it's a good idea. It's a bad idea to keep borrowing more money. If your college-age kid has $2,000 on its credit card, do you give them another one? Do you extend their limit? Or do you chop it up and say, you got to start paying this back? Nobody does this. Nobody runs their family this way. Nobody runs their economy. Whose fault is it? Which party's at fault? Oh. You're exactly right. And not one of them gets it. I call it the unholy alliance. Am I projecting on my microphone? You guys hear me well? All right. The Republicans, or some of the Republicans on the right, say, we want unlimited money for the military. I don't care what it takes, we got to spend it. And the left, the Democrats typically say, we need more welfare money. And so what do? They get together and they do the secret handshake. I don't know what the handshake is, but it's a secret handshake. And they raise both. And so when you have Republicans come home and say, well, I've got a strong military for you, ask them how strong we are if we're projecting power from bankruptcy court. Ask them if we get stronger and stronger as a nation if we're borrowing more money. We owe $19 trillion. We borrow $1 million a minute. And some of you may say, but I believe in a strong military. We have to have a strong national defense. So do I. I've got 3 nephews in the military, 1 career Navy and 2 just joining up. 2 enlisted and 1's an officer. I believe in a strong military. My brother-in-law went to the Air Force Academy. My father-in-law was a career Air Force guy. I think I have 6 members of my family who serve in the military. but we don't have unlimited amounts of money. We are not stronger if we're borrowing the money. How much money do we spend on national defense right now in the military? We spend more than the next 10 countries combined. Russia and China, we spend more than them combined, and the next 8 countries. So it's not like we're spending no money. Where's the money going? I'll give you 2 examples, and this ought to make you mad. Make you, I must use a stronger word. I'm trying to be nice. This ought to really anger you. All right. Last week we discovered that we spent $43 million on a gas station in Afghanistan. Out of the Defense Department. $43 million. The cost that was estimated that it would cost if it were in Rochester, about $500,000. So 80 times the normal price was paid. Someone should go to jail for that. But that stuff happens on and on and on. We spent $800,000 in Afghanistan developing a televised cricket league. They don't even have TV in Afghanistan. So we're developing a cricket league so they can watch cricket games, they can feel better about themselves. I'd rather have that money at home. I don't think we need to be spending, we don't have it anyway. We're borrowing it from China to send it to Afghanistan. $800,000. I don't believe that came out of the Defense Department, but it was your money nonetheless. That may have come out of the State Department. We're buying friends over there by, getting a cricket league. We spent $250,000 last year in Pakistan to bring 24 kids from Pakistan to send them to space camp in Alabama. I'll bet you there's some people here who like to send their kids and their grandkids to space camp. What are we doing bringing kids from Pakistan and paying their way to go to Alabama? If you want to give your money to a private charity that brings kids from Pakistan to Alabama, fine. We shouldn't borrow money to do that. Bernie's been talking about free education for everybody. You know who already has free education? Foreign students. $15 million was spent on foreign students to go to community college. What are we doing? Where's the money coming from? Are we completely insane as a country? $15 million to bring foreign kids to go to community college. People say, well, how are you going to defend the country? What are you going to do? And I said, well, maybe we ought to just start by not funding our enemies. Maybe we can start with not getting... Have one rule of thumb that we might be able to say and apply throughout our government. Let's not fund countries that hate us or burn our flag. I introduced an amendment in the Foreign Relations Committee, which I thought was pretty much common sense. We discovered that many countries that are persecuting Christians get money from us. I just introduced a simple amendment. How about no more money for any country that persecutes Christians? And I wish I had better news. I wish I could tell you that they took my amendment and passed it and we are no longer doing it. How did I define persecution of Christians? I decided I wasn't going to beat around the bush. Let's define it exactly. If your country has the death penalty for criticizing the state religion, that's persecuting Christians, because you know what countries we're talking about, and you know what religion we're talking about criticizing. There are at least 25 countries around the world that if you criticize the state religion, you can be put to death. Islam. When the state religion is Islam. If you criticize Islam, you can be put to death. If someone who's a Muslim marries a Christian, you can be put to death. There was a woman in Pakistan, you say, oh no, certainly this doesn't happen, right? There was a woman in Pakistan by the name of Asia Bibi. She went to draw water from the well in a small village, a predominantly Muslim village, but she was a Christian. As she was drawing water from the well, they began beating her with sticks and stoning her. As she lay bleeding on the ground, shouting, crying out for help, finally the police came. You know what they did? They arrested her. The other villager said that she had criticized the state religion. Hearsay and gossip. In our country, we're of many different religions, but none of you can go to jail because your neighbor says you said something about their religion. That's not the way we operate. But in Pakistan, a country that we give billions of dollars, that's the way it operates. Same in many other countries that we give money to. So I introduced this amendment, and you know what the vote was? The vote was 18-2. Every Democrat and virtually every Republican voted to keep sending money to countries that hate us, to countries that persecute Christians. But you know what? When I talk to crowds like this across America, I get to meet anybody who's for that. I can't meet one American or one Republican outside of Washington who thinks it's a good idea to give countries money to countries that hate us, that persecute Christians. This is how far out of touch your government is. You know what we ought to do? Well, we have term limits for everyone. Term limits the first week I was up there. I got 8 or 9 co-sponsors. They don't want to vote term limits on themselves. So I'm to the point where I'm frustrated. I think the states ought to rise up and say enough's enough. We want a balanced budget amendment. We want term limits, and we're not going to rest until we get it. Because the thing is they are really, really, really out of touch there. And it's both parties. It's both sides that are bankrupting the country. We have to decide as we move forward, who do we want to represent us? And the point is, and this is a point I'll try to make on the stage tomorrow night, is that I think I'm the only fiscal conservative on the stage. And you say, well, that's presumptuous. There are other conservatives on the stage. Think about it. I'm the only fiscal conservative on the stage because I'm willing to conserve money across the board. I'm willing to say, even for something I believe strongly in, national defense, that we need to audit the Pentagon, and that we can't have a blank check and can't spend $1,000 for toilet seat lids. Contrast what I'm for with some of the others on the stage. I think when we go to war, that the people should initiate war and declare war through the Congress. That's what the Constitution says. I think if there's one thing we've learned from the Middle East and from watching it for my entire lifetime is that every time we've toppled a secular dictator, we've gotten chaos, the rise of radical Islam, and we're less safe. Think about it. Hussein, was he a terrible guy? Absolutely. Are we better off with him gone? I don't know. Iran is stronger. Who's Iraq's best buddy now and best ally? Iran. There are Iranian troops in Iraq now. Who's their second best friend? Russia. You have a chaotic situation. Many people predict Iraq will never ever be a country again. But you have people on both sides of the aisle who want to go back. Hillary Clinton wants to go back. She wants a no-fly zone. So does Marco Rubio. So you've got people on both sides of the aisle that have the same foreign policy. Do you know how much the first Iraq war cost? $1 trillion. Do you know how many people died? Our young men and women? Nearly 5,000 young men and women died from our country. I don't take that lightly. I'm proud of them for their service. I'm proud of them for their sacrifice. But you know, it's my job as a legislator, as long as people elect me, it's my job to try to make determinations about when it is time to go to war and when it's not. There have been times in our history when we're overwhelmingly in favor of defending the country, and I'm right there with you. After Pearl Harbor, the country was almost unanimous. After we were attacked on 9/11, the country was almost unanimous. But you know, the declaration of war against the people who attacked us on 9/11 is now being used for all of this. There are people, we went to war in Libya, and I raised my hand and I said, who voted for that? We didn't have any vote. How can the president take us to war in Libya without a vote? And they say, oh, that was the 9/11 document to go to war after 9/11. They didn't attack us in Libya. That means that the document means nothing, or it means everything, and we can go to war anywhere around the world without limit. Are we better off since we toppled Gaddafi? Gaddafi was a dictator, but he was once again a secular dictator. He kept down radical Islam. With him gone, Libya is a failed state. Libya is chaotic. A third of Libya now pledges allegiance to ISIS. People are like, what are we going to do about ISIS? And I was like, maybe we should start with not arming them. You know, or they're terrorists with our money. They have tanks. I think they've got 43 tanks. They've got anti-tank weapons, all of this from the U.S. They had a vote in my committee on arming the Syrian rebels. And once again, I raised my hand and I said, the great irony is that within a year, we'll have to go back to fight against our own weapons. It's about where we are now. Why did we foolishly arm the Syrian rebels? Because people like Hillary Clinton and Marco Rubio are for it. Therefore, getting involved everywhere all the time without thinking of the consequences. The ambassador, the former ambassador to Syria, came before our committee and he said, well, it is inevitable that some of these arms will be fighting alongside Al-Qaeda. I raised my hand again and said, we're going to be on the same side as Al-Qaeda? He's like, well, yes, because they'll be fighting against Assad, and Assad's this terrible guy. Well, sometimes maybe there's a variation of evil on both sides. Well, why in the world would we fight with Al-Qaeda? This is before anybody knew anything about ISIS. And I said, certainly something could go wrong here, right? So what happened is, we did push Assad back a little bit, and that gave space. And in that space, ISIS then grew. We've got to think through what we're doing. We've got to think through and say, there are times we have to go to war, but war should be the last resort. And war should be declared. Did you know that President Obama sent 50 people to war last week? Who in the hell sends 50 people to war? About 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, President Obama said, I'm going to train 60 fighters, the Syrian miners. You know how much it cost? $250 million, $4 million per fighter. The first week he decided he would send 4 of them to war. All right, who sends 4 people to war? Dumbest thing I've ever heard of. You know how long until they were captured? 10 minutes. Who were they captured by? Al-Nusra. Who's Al-Nusra? Sort of one of our allies, but people who hate us. They're sort of a variant of Al-Qaeda. There's Al-Qaeda, but there's Al-Nusra. They're jihadists. They're people who hate us. They captured them and all the equipment in 10 minutes. So now the president's going to send 50 people in. And some of it's kind of tragically comic, but think about also what might happen. If you've ever served in the military, and I'm sensing there are a few of you that are here, what's going to happen, if one of our soldiers is captured? You've seen how horrible these people are. Is it going to drag us further into a war? But also just what happens to that one young individual. You don't send one person into battle. You don't send 50 people into battle. One thing I do agree with Colin Powell and agree with George W. Bush on this, you don't go to war in an underwhelming fashion. When and if you have to go to war, you go with overwhelming force and you go to win, not to monkey around. In order for us to win, in order for Republicans to win a state like Minnesota, I think you have to think outside the box. And I think I'm kind of there. I'm outside the box. I'm a little different than some of the Republicans because I'm not as eager for war. I think Congress should declare war. I think war should be the last resort. I also think that to be fiscally conservative, you have to conserve money, both in the military as well as in the welfare. But I also believe in your civil liberties. I believe that the Fourth Amendment, which says the government can't come into your house without a warrant, is pretty important. I think that the government shouldn't be able to collect all your phone records all the time with a generalized warrant. Many Republicans disagree with me. But if you think about trying to win Minnesota, you think about trying to attract independents, it's going to take someone like myself who's willing to defend privacy, willing to defend the right to be left alone. I also believe in justice and that we should be the party of justice. Somehow the Democrats co-opted the word justice somewhere along the way. We were the party of emancipation. We were the party of civil rights. We should be the party that defends the individual, including minorities. And I think we can be again. And I'll leave you with this story. The Sixth Amendment says that you have a right to a trial by a jury. In 2011, right after I arrived in the Senate, I had a big fight. I've had a few. Let's not call it a fight, let's say a debate. I had this big debate, and I don't like to name names, but it was with the senator from Arizona. And we were debating over whether or not an American citizen accused of a crime in the United States could be imprisoned without a trial forever. He said, yeah, they're dangerous. And I was incredulous to think, really? An American citizen accused of a crime in our country could just be plucked up and sent to Guantanamo Bay? He said, yeah, they're dangerous. So it sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not? It really kind of goes against maybe 800 to 1,000 years of tradition of us trying to restrain the state. I mean, our traditions, we didn't start with our revolution. This really starts, in Runny Me, 1215, Magna Carta, restrain the power of the king. We are part of a long-standing tradition. Part of that's a right to a trial by jury, because that protects you against despotism. But as we were having this debate, he was so flippant and just saying, no, you don't need a trial. They're dangerous. We're going to call them an enemy combatant and we'll just put them somewhere. I was thinking at that time about the times we've gotten it wrong. You ever remember how we locked up 100,000 Japanese Americans just because of the way they looked? Does anybody remember that we tapped the phones of those who were involved in the civil rights era without warrants? There have been times when we got it wrong. And I thought to myself about Richard Jewell. He was the guy everybody said was the Olympic bomber. You remember back in the late 1990s? Everybody said he was guilty. Within an hour, they had him on television. All the cameras said he was guilty. The problem was he wasn't. He didn't do it. But when I think of the Bill of Rights, when I think of our party, when I think of justice, I think of how we're there to protect someone that's falsely accused. But I also think about if Richard Jewell had been a black man in the South in 1920, he might not have lived the rest of the day. We have times in our history when we haven't done a good enough job. But you know what? There was always a Republican Party that was standing there for justice. But we lost that sort of reputation. I don't think we did anything wrong, just somewhere it went away. What I want to do is be the party that gets that back, the party that stands for justice, the party that says, you know what, we believe in the right to a trial by jury just as much as we believe in the right to bear arms. I think when we become the party that defends the right to a trial by jury with the same vigor and passion that we defend the Second Amendment right to bear arms, then we're going to be a party that excites and brings new people in, that has a chance in Minnesota. That's the kind of party. That's the party that's going to rock and roll to victory. And that's the party I want to be part of. Thank you very much.
It's great to be here. Part of my speech is about how we can have a Republican win in Minnesota, which has been an unusual thing and probably hasn't happened in a while. And I think I'm the kind of Republican that is just different enough to actually win in Minnesota. Yeah, I'm going to ask most of those to drop out because I really think they just are saying the wrong things. And now they all agree. I'm the only one really doesn't want to go back to war in the Middle East. You got Hillary Clinton wants a no-fly zone. You got Marco Rubio wants a no-fly zone. I think really there's not a lot of difference on foreign policy between some of the candidates. The only way you can be fiscally conservative is if you believe in conserving money across the board. Many Republicans want to cut domestic spending, but they want to inflate and increase military spending. Marco Rubio has proposed what Cato Institute said is $1 trillion in new military spending. How does he propose to pay for that? How can that possibly be considered conservative? That'll blow a hole in the debt, blow a hole in the budget. We're already borrowing $1 million a minute, and he wants to add $1 trillion to military spending. So I think we haven't had a debate where anybody ever talks about how liberal it is to increase military spending. Well, I think a Republican that's different, that thinks outside the box. I'm a Republican who thinks that war should be the last resort, not the first, and that we should do everything possible to avoid war, and that it should be really the last resort. I'm one who believes that your civil liberties should be protected, that your phone records are yours, and you have an expectation of privacy. I'm a Republican who thinks that kids who make a mistake with marijuana shouldn't go to jail. I think I have a lot of things that would attract independents, whereas most other Republicans that are just sort of the cookie cutter Republican probably don't have much chance in Minnesota, but I think I do. We had big crowds everywhere we went. We had a big crowd at University of Minnesota and Minneapolis, also in Duluth. kids energize us and energize the campaign, and they're a big focus of what we're trying to do. I think kids are more open. They aren't as wedded to party as adults are. And so it's a strategy of ours across the country. We've organized 350 college campuses around the country. Minnesota is a caucus state, so we will put a lot of effort in here. We're on the ground with the ground game with an organization beginning to form.